Hi there, my name is Ben and I'm just going to run through some settings on a Victron system, off-grid system, single phase and a Freedom Won battery. So I'm going to share a screen and just quickly run through how to set up the charge controller, how to set up the inverter so that they work nicely with Freedom Won. So the first thing I'd like to show is that there is a web page that you can go to. I'll show it here. And you just need to type in something like Victron. Oh, let me get this sorted. Just type in something like Victron Freedom Won, and it will come up with a link to this page. And it's how to set up Freedom Won batteries with a Victron system. So there's a few examples there, what it can and can't work with, product compatibility, and then you get down into the nitty-gritty. And so what we're going to do right now is we've got a site here that I've named Victron Freedom Won off-grid system. And we just want to check the settings. Now, at the moment, the remote console is not working, but there's not actually a lot that you need to set in the remote console to make it work. Okay, so the main thing you need to set up in the remote console is under services and make sure that the CAN bus setting is set to 500 kps, and then the battery will then have access to the GX device, which is this, in this case, is a color control GX. So if we look at the device list, we've got a color control GX and we've got a Quattro 10. So it's 48 volt, 10,000 VA or watts, if you are simple. No. And we've got a Freedom Won battery. And we've got an old charge controller, which looks like it might have been a different device. So I'm going to delete that. If it comes back, then it will show up again. So there's no problem deleting it out of this list. I've got a charge controller there, which is a 450-100. So what I'm going to do is check that the firmware has been updated in all these devices. And it's just making a connection to the GX device and scanning for what devices are connected. Don't worry about no VE direct ping reply. That is basically if there's more than one VE port that and there's any VE direct port that's not being used, it will just say no ping reply, and that only applies to that port. So you can see, we can see these three devices are connected currently and online, and these are ones that we have access to update the firmware. And we can see there that the firmware is all up to date. So that's great. If it's not, you can go through and you can click update the firmware. Be aware that when you update the firmware on the Quattro inverter or any inverter, it is going to power cycle the inverter down and then back up again. So if I go back to device list, now I'm going to look at the Vconfigure. Now the Vconfigure is, see the VE bus system, Victron Energy Bus. It's configuring the inverters that are on the system. So VE, and we've got Vconfigure. So I click on that, and again, it's going to scan for all the devices, and it's going to find what's on the bus, and there it is. That's what we've got. So we can download that software, and then we can get into it using Vconfigure. Takes a few moments to download the software. What it's going to do is it's going to come into our downloads folder. And then we'll be able to open it online. So what you actually should do while that's downloading, I'll show you. We can go Victron software, and you can download all the necessary Victron software onto your laptop. This is just a one-time thing. So you're going to download Vectron Connect for Windows or whatever you've got, and you're going to download VE configuration tools for VE bus products, VE configuration tools. Download and install that software, and you'll be able to do everything that you're seeing me do now. So in the download section, I can see that software that's downloaded. I click on it, and I open it, and it will open in VE configure. There it is. So we can see that it's been configured for 16 amps on the AC2 input. So I'm going to assume that the generator can handle 16 amps. Now it's got overruled by remote. Now that means that if the generator, you're not sure about what the generator can handle, if you click overruled by remote, then you can actually change the setting on the fly through the touch screen or the color control screen on site. So that's great. If the generator's starting to struggle, you can just ramp back the current a little bit. Now you're going to want to enable the battery monitor and put in how many amp hours the battery is. In this case, 300 amp hours. That's a 1512 battery. And for lithium or Freedom Won lithium, you're normally going to put an arbitrary value of 95% in there. So basically, once it hits the absorbed voltage, what that means is once it hits the absorbed voltage, it's going to assume that the battery is now at 95%, so it's only got 5% left to go. In reality, that's probably going to be higher than 95%. Now, just so you know, any battery settings that you put into this inverter are actually not going to be used, because the battery controls all the charging and discharging settings. The only settings that will be used is the low voltage cutoff and state of charge shutdown if you want to use that. Okay, so this setting here, the battery state of charge is not going to be calculated by this. The only time that it is going to be calculated by these settings is when the battery communications cable gets disconnected, and then the Freedom Won battery can run standalone. It's perfectly capable of that. So these settings then come into play, and the Victron system starts calculating the state of charge, etc. So we've got a grid connection. Now we've got no grid code because it's off grid. And I normally would untick UPS function, because that then allows a UPS function is basically when the Victron inverter sees any fluctuation from the generator, it's going to let it go and go back to inverting. So what happens if you untick UPS? It's going to allow a lot of voltage sag and a lot of voltage rise. So then it will accept a lot more junk power coming from a generator that may not be that high quality. So you can tick it or untick it. Generally, I'll untick it, but I'm going to make the assumption that the generator is working okay on this site. But if it's not working okay and it disconnects a lot, or it doesn't even connect, then untick UPS, and that may help it. So on the inverter side of things, we need to say what voltage is the system going to be at. So let's say the system is a long way from the actual load. So it's out in a shed somewhere by a big array, and there's a big sub-main cable going to the load. You may want to push that voltage up maybe by 10%. But in this case, I'll leave it at 230 volts. Power assist basically means if the load is likely to be above the generator level, then the inverter will assist the generator with high peak loads. Now we want to change the DC shutdown. Now this is going back to that Freedom Won setup page on the Victron website, And so the voltage there is 47 volts. And then the low voltage input, the low voltage restart. So it'll turn off at 47 volts and it will wait until it's up to 52.5 volts before it restarts. And then the alarm is 51.5. So the inverter will show up a little pre-alarm saying we're getting low and the battery's starting to get low and we're in trouble. You may also want to tell it to shut down and restart. So the restart voltage here, we'll say 21%, and we will shut it down at 20%. This means the inverter will turn off at 20% state of charge, then it will wait for the battery to start getting charged the next day, and when it gets to 21%, it'll turn back on again. Okay, so let's go to the charger mode. Now you're going to want to set up the battery for the correct charging. And these voltages, you need to select lithium batteries. Don't open the battery dialog yet. You're going to select lithium batteries. Don't select configured for VE bus BMS, because that's only for Victron batteries. It's not for every other battery on the market, okay? If you do that, it's going to start doing some weird things and shutting down and doing random stuff. So, battery type. I've actually saved the battery type. You can create a new type based on the settings that you've set. On this page here, you can go to battery type, create a new type, and then name it. Now, I've already done that. So I'm going to click Freedom Won and go OK. It says we've modified these settings. Great. And it's 55.8 volts, 55.8. If the battery can handle the full charging current of the inverter, great. Leave it at normal, at default. And normally I would change the absorption time to 1 hour. Okay. So now this is an old type, so I'm going to go back to 95% here. Just bear with me. And you go create new type. No. Okay, so you can create a new type of battery if you want to save that on your PC. So that battery type is just saved on your PC. Virtual switch, turn off the virtual switch unless you really want to use it. It's kind of almost a legacy feature, but you can do some stuff with it. We won't go through that at the moment. Assistance. So if you have an AC coupled PV array, then you'll put PV inverter support. And that will then frequency shift to ramp back PV. You may also do a relay assistant where you go programmable relay, and then you can turn the AC2 output on and off based on certain settings like state of charge. And that may be useful so that you can, when the battery's full, you can turn a hot water element on so the solar actually continues to be used for something useful on the site, and the hot water cylinder starts getting heated up. Advanced, we don't need to worry about that. So that is pretty much the programming done for the inverter. So then you just close this down. It's going to ask if you want to save it, and you go yes. And it says a little warning there, be aware, due to changes in certain settings, whatever, it will switch off temporarily when the file is sent. So be aware that you're going to lose power to the site. Now, this is important to know because you've got an internet connection here on the site, and it's probably powered by the inverter. So it could take, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes before this system comes back online. Okay. So you go yes. And then what you do is you click upload, select the file, and it's going to come and go to your downloads folder. And then what you can do is you can go find the file that you've just saved. It's 5:03 p.m. now, and that file was saved at 5:03, so you know that's the correct file. Double click it, and it's going to start uploading that file for you. And it will power cycle the site. And you'll see there that it goes through various writings, and it's actually going to lock out and just stay on this screen for a long time until the internet comes back, or until it decides, I don't see an internet anymore, I don't see the system, and freaks out. And then you just go back to the dashboard and you have to start again. Or you don't have to start again on the programming, sorry, you just reboot and then go back, refresh on the Internet Explorer, and just wait for it to come back online. Okay, so what we have here is we have the warning I was talking about, the two-way communication services stop responding. Basically, it's the internet connection because the inverter is shut down and has probably rebooted well and truly by now, but the internet is taking a while on that site. So you can just go and close that part of the window, go back to dashboard, and we just want to wait until we get to real time, which looks like we're in real time. And then we can go to device list. And it will tell you when it was last seen. And we can also go back to device list and click on the remote Vconfig. Make sure we can still see the inverter. No reason why we shouldn't. And we can download that, and we can then check those settings over. I'm not going to run through that with you now, but you download it and you just double check that those settings have all taken. It's just a nice double check to do to make sure that there were no glitches when it uploaded. Right, so now what we want to do is we are pretty much done with the work on the VRM dashboard. So you're going to now want to go to your start menu and type in Victron and find Victron Connect. So you're going to go to the Victron Connect app, click on that. I've already got this open here. Start typing in the name of the customer that you're wanting to deal with, and you click on, you'll see the GX device, which in this case is a color control. You click on the GX device and it's going to bring up whatever is connected to that GX device. Currently, you're going to be able to only see the charge controllers, which is all good because we've already programmed the inverter through the VRM. That may change in the future. So if you can see the inverter there as well, then go ahead and you can program the inverter using this method as well. But for now, we're going to program the charge controller. So we click on the charge controller and it'll show you some info about it. You've got solar 1, solar 2. So we've got 2 trackers on this one. And we've got what the battery voltage is. And see here, it says external control. That says that it's actually, the charge controller is not using its own settings. It's using information from the battery, which is good. You want that in a managed battery system. So now we click on the little, once the settings have loaded, up the right here, we're going to click on this settings. We've got battery solar relay display. Basically, I'm really only interested in the battery settings. And you'll see there that these are all set up correctly. We've got, you're going to go from a preset, built-in preset, to user defined, which is this one here. Remote on and off. It shouldn't be 2-wire BMS. Do not click on that. It's remote on off. So don't get confused about the word BMS there. Again, that's a Victron product specific. So we want remote on off when we're dealing with Freedom Won batteries. And then you may or may not tick expert mode. You really don't need to. Is it BMS controlled? Well, in this case, you don't really have a choice. You're either going, look, it's telling you it's BMS controlled and you can reset the BMS control. Now, if I reset this, you watch, I'm going to reset the BMS control. It says no, and it goes straight back to yes. The reason for that is, do it again. The reason for that is it can see that there's data coming from a BMS, and it's just going to say, I'm BMS controlled. You don't have a choice in disabling that BMS control. However, if there's some kind of problem on the site, then you can unplug the BMS from the battery, or you can go into the remote console and you can go to services, CAN bus, turn it off. It will then stop communicating with the battery. Then you go into this and you can press reset and it will stay on no. But for now, it's going to go back to yes. Okay, so when it's not on BMS control, see, there we go, it's popped up, it's BMS controlled. So when it's not BMS controlled, the charge controller is going to use these settings. Whatever you set in here, the charge controller is going to use. Now, just for a demonstration, I'm going to change the float voltage to 55.6. And click OK. Now you watch. See here, you see this little green tick comes up. That means that that setting has been put into the charge controller and it's done. You're programmed for that setting. So when you go and change something, you need to then set it up properly. So I'm going to go 55.8, and you need to set all of these at 55.8. Now, temperature compensation should be disabled, because temperature compensation is only used for lead acid batteries. There's a few other battery types that need a different voltage based on whatever the ambient temperature or the cell temperature is. Lithium, it's the same voltage for charging and discharging, in this case charging because it's a charger. So you don't use temperature compensation. So you're going to disable that. And again, we're going to look for that little tick, and there it is. Low temperature cutoff. You don't want the battery to charge below zero. The cells should never charge below zero. So we make that 5 degrees just to be safe. If you charge any lithium battery, or any that's on the market now, any technology that's available now, if you charge that below 5 degrees Celsius, you risk damaging it. So those are your settings. All done, all looks good. Come back to here. Now you may decide, well, you can go Celsius or Fahrenheit, whatever you want to do. Backlight, automatic, or always on or always off. So I prefer automatic, so that you can, whatever, it'll be on when it's on. But if you're in a spot where you've got lots of insects, like maybe it's in a shed that's not that well sealed up or something like that, you could turn always off on so that the backlight doesn't attract a whole lot of insects. Whatever you want to do there, it's all good. You can also program the relays up. There's a relay on the device. And yep, just basically leave these at leave these at default, really, the other settings. So that's pretty much it. You can close that down, or you can go back. Once you've done that device, you can then go into another device if you've got more than one MPPT, for example. So that is now fully programmed, and you're pretty much good to go. Now you can turn the inverter charger settings off and on so that you can see settings here, but there's a danger in that. And that danger is that you can accidentally turn the inverter off, which means you've just killed power to the site. What happens when you kill power to the site? You lose internet. You cannot then fix your accident by turning the inverter back on again. So usually, unless you're an advanced user and you don't want to risk this sort of thing, leave those settings off.
And
I think that's probably it for now. So yeah, thanks for watching. And hey, look, if there's anything you need to know, just um, give me, ask the question, whatever, and I'll see if I can figure it out and let you know, or just say no, I've no idea, and I quit. Okay, catch you later.